Hey guys, Emily Muccianti here with a video today about morphology and bringing this down into our primary classes. Today we are going to review the resource by Dr. Deb Glaser, Morphemes for Little Ones. Now, if you are an upper grade teacher or interventionist and you did not catch my last video, we actually reviewed Morpheme Magic, which is her curriculum for older students. But today our focus is going to be on morphology for our youngest students. And I'm going to tell you from the beginning, I was a little skeptical as far as, is this appropriate for our little children, our primary, especially kinder? And stick around for my feeling about this at the end. But first, remember to like, subscribe, and share. This is an important concept that we need to get out. Actually, intervention in general is an important concept we need to get out. So please make sure that you are sharing. Leave me a comment, do all the fun things. Okay, so let's start with, first of all, where does morphology fit into our instruction? And I'm going to ask you to imagine the simple view of reading. With the simple view of reading, we know that word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. And so what I want you to remember is that reading comprehension is a product or an outcome of all of these earlier skills working together so that a student has what they need to actually interpret and comprehend a text. So in intervention, we are mostly, at least in my experience, very heavy in the word recognition side of that formula. Students have to be able to read the print on the page and interpret what the words say. Now, that is the decoding aspect of this. But the other side is the language comprehension piece of this, which involves vocabulary knowledge, oral language, the ability to understand and have conversations and to process all of that information. And quite honestly, in my intervention experience, this was a neglected side of my work, to be very, very frank with you. And I think back when I was in the classroom, it wasn't quite known the impact about language and oral language particularly, and how this impacts reading. And so it was kind of neglected, or, we lost our focus. So we looked at reading comprehension as a separate skill rather than the product of the decoding and the language comprehension working together. And so I think this focus and move or interest in morphology is a really interesting and important pivot or refocus, if you will. And when I did the review for Morpheme Magic, all on board. It was very clear to me we absolutely need to spend time working with morphology, especially in our tier 1 classroom instruction. But it is appropriate also for our intervention, depending on what our data is showing and what our need is. But my question was, is this really an appropriate place with our youngest children? So let me tell you a little bit about what I've learned with this particular resource, which is written again by Dr. Deb Glaser, Morphemes for Little Ones. You can see that I'm all tagged up here with my notes and everything. I've been poring over it, and I want to start by reading something that Dr. Deb talks about on actually in the preface at the very beginning. So she says, words grow in increments as language develops. A first spoken word, ball, becomes balls when a colorful display of beach balls is approached at the store. Deer becomes deers. Jump changes to jumped when talking about playing a game of jumping from rock to rock with friends at the park. These are examples of a morphological complexity that young children produce without receiving explicit instruction about morphology. This early acquisition of spoken language is building a foundation upon which reading will be built. And I just really, it started to kind of focus me on why we are doing this with younger children. And when to get into it, I think the way that it's presented here in Morphemes for Little Ones is very developmentally appropriate. Now, we know that with our youngest children, particularly, but honestly, with all of our students, we need to have lots and lots of oral language. Our English learners benefit a great deal from this, but all of our students benefit from this. And so this is about providing developmentally appropriate oral language supports for our little ones with the goal in mind that we are developing that language comprehension side of the simple view of reading. Okay, so the question is morphology like vocabulary? Are they the same? And they're not the same thing. So Dr. Deb talks about morphology goes much deeper than the meanings of single words. Morphology is the building blocks, the meaningful parts of words that are put together to create new words, bigger words, and we build on that. And so when we teach decoding and encoding to our students at even the youngest ages, this is really where it's appropriate to also teach the morphemes and that morphological awareness. So within this program, we know that the students are hearing words and morphemes, they're reading words and morphemes, they're writing words and morphemes, and they're using these. And all of this is with the goal in mind that we are giving them the building blocks to build these bigger, larger, more complex words, which we know they need to have deeper comprehension. So the curriculum itself has 3 levels within one book. So let me pull this out for you. I've got so many things in front of me so I don't forget anything. So this is the book, right? This is the teacher's edition. Is this big? That's not very big, right? And within this, we have 3 levels of instruction. So level 1 is designed to be for, let's see, it's recommended for kindergarten and most of first grade. So this is, and each of these sections are also 18 lessons, which we'll get into. Level 2 is really more advanced first grade and second grade. And then level 3 is for advanced second grade and third grade. But what she also says is these are absolutely appropriate for intervention groups. So even level 1, which you might see in the tier 1 of kindergarten, is perfectly appropriate for first through third grade, depending on the needs of your students and our English learners. So that is absolutely something to consider. The focus of the content inside of these lessons is we are looking at free and bound morphemes. Most of the focus is on affixes and developing those affixes, but we also get into inflectional and derivational suffixes. And all of this gets way more complex as you move into the morpheme magic, which is for grades 4 through 12. Now, from an intervention standpoint, there is something also that I want to read to you that she mentions here about intervention. And so this is on page 10. Intervention studies in grades K1 and 2, wherein morphological awareness was taught, resulted in significant improvements in reading, spelling, and reading comprehension. The groups in these intervention studies were low socioeconomic children, and the researchers' recommendation is that student populations demonstrating difficulty learning to read may benefit from morphological instruction. And that was cited from Wolter and Green in 2013. And so there's absolutely a potential place for morphology in intervention. But my first reaction was, I would like to see this really as a tier 1 instructional component first, being more preventative so that we can develop our morphology within all of our students. So what does this look like then in kindergarten? And she talks about some different tips for delivering this. And I'm also going to show you some samples in a moment. But each lesson takes 1 to 2 weeks. And she says, take your time. She says this over and over. So I love this. Thank you, Dr. Deb. Take your time. Go deeper. This is about developing a curiosity for words and this word consciousness. It is not something that should be rushed through like a scope and sequence of check, I have to do that, check, and moving on. So she continuously reminds us to take your time. So what does this look like in kindergarten? And these, I just want to point out a couple of tips before I get into some of the specifics. But in kindergarten, she mentions this is a tip. They're not requirements. These are options. But she says that the level 1 lessons can be taught during circle time. So we're in kindergarten. We are bringing attention to these words and these morphemes and bringing in the students' read alouds, talking about language, drawing explicit examples from the reading curriculum also. And this is a lot of modeling of vocabulary and words, a lot of oral language practice. Most of this, when we're talking about this for kindergarten in particular, is going to be orally done, verbal. There's not going to be a whole lot of writing with this. It's about having these conversations that surround these words. Now, as it gets more into the level 2, these could then be brought in and added to your writing block and your reading block. This is where those are done, and I'll show you a little bit once I share my screen. And then it gets a little more complex with the level 3 also. But so I'm convinced that this is a worthwhile endeavor for intervention. But again, I think that it really should have a strong foundation in tier 1. So as an interventionist, if you are looking at your data and you have evidence that students are really lacking in either reading comprehension, or even decoding. We know that morphology is going to help with both decoding and encoding. This is absolutely something that could be pushed down into tier 1 as a way to make this instruction more explicit, and you will see the results in tier 1, thereby reducing the need for intervention. And that's the whole point of this. So I really like that. So what I want to do is show you some of these pieces and share my screen with you. Okay. So when you go to the 95percentgroup.com and you look for products, underneath products here is a tab, and you can click on vocabulary and morphology, and that will take you to this website or this page of their website. And you can see here we've got Morpheme Magic, Morpheme for Littles. There's a lot of other products that you could look at, but to look at the Morpheme for Littles, I'm going to click here. This is going to give you a little bit of an introduction, talk about some of the information, and I'm going to link all of this in the show notes down below so that you don't have to go searching for it. But what you can do also is access the sample that I'm going to show you now. You have to fill out a little thing, but then you get free access to this sample, and you can go through and see other parts of the product points that they wanted to bring out. But let me share with you, this is the sample page for Morphemes for Littles. And I really enjoyed reading the whole introduction inside of this book. I think, again, I came into this thinking this may not be something for my youngest students, but now I see the rationale behind it. So I really appreciated Dr. Deb's explanation. It was very practical, very easy to understand. So I went through all of that, and there's a great deal more inside of the actual resource itself. But the lesson structure is very similar to Morpheme Magic. You can see that we have a lesson, and the level 1 lessons are really working on plurals, suffixes, and tense. So we are talking about some of those bound morphemes. There is an explanation about what this particular morpheme is that they wanted to, that they want to explore. There is what the teachers need to know, the word banks, some additional words. Now the word banks and the doubling it here, these are words that you can then use in your explanations and displaying for your kids. Now, if we're doing this in kindergarten, there's going to be a lot less writing for the kinders, and it would be more either display or even just verbal. So we can see that there is an explanation of that morpheme. There is a phoneme connection in every single lesson so that they are not only hearing the morpheme, but they're also hearing the individual phonemes. And so there's a connection to that. Every lesson does include a decoding and spelling. You can see here they're talking about kinder will engage with morphemes through oral language exercises. So they recommend that if you're doing the working with kinder, that you actually skip and come down to the oral language component. So there's something here called a morpheme grabber. Now, this is the book, the lexicon that the students will actually use to write their morphemes and the words that they are collecting. In Morpheme Magic, she called it a lexicon, and we use spiral notebooks. In the Morphemes for Littles, let me show you what that looks like. This is something, and there are Blackline Masters in the back, where the teacher actually creates small little booklets. And so for the youngest level, she recommends, I think it was for a week or two, that they hold their work and then they can use that later. And she gives them new booklets every couple of weeks. Excuse me. When we get into level 2, we are looking at more of it's a larger size booklet that is created, and I'll show you this also. There is a component where you actually get to box and break apart the morphemes, and you can see here the page is still having that dotted line in the center, but as the kids grow and get more mature, we can see that the size of the line changes and the boxes for the actual morphemes change as well. Now, and at some point she even says you can start using composition books or morpheme, spiral notebooks if you would like for that at a certain point when they get a little more advanced. Now, there are always going to be some additional activities that can be done, and inside of the resource book, there are a number of different activities that can be utilized to engage students with these words. But that really is the structure of each lesson. There's always a review and a practice. You can see here with the level 2, it gets a little more detailed into what they're doing. The words get a little more complex. We also will start to see some breaking down or chunking of those words because the kids are going to now be doing much more writing. And that's, you can see here, here's that morpheme grabber inside of the teacher's edition. And then there's also a part, and I'm looking for it, where there is a dictation component to this, and there are a number of different sentence starters or sentence frames to make sure that students are using these words grammatically in the right grammatical structure for the their writing and reading. And so I really like that. Here's the scope and sequence. Again, she says, take your time. This is not meant to be something that we're just going to check off, but you can see in K1, they really start with compound words and plurals, moving into past tense, comparatives, superlatives, suffix ing, and some very common prefixes un, re, and pre. And then they get to be a little more complex. You see more suffixes here in the level 2, some prefixes, and then again, level 3. The structure of the lesson for the week. Now, again, she recommends that you spend a week or two, depending on your kids, with each of these lessons. And a lesson inside of the book is just 2 pages. So these are not meant to be things that are done, very quickly. You're going to look at this and see how you want to break this down. So if I go back to this lesson, let me just take lesson 2, for example, you can see we've got an introduction, the explore the phonemes and the orthography. You may only do a part like the morpheme and the phonemes in the first day. You may get into the reading and the spelling in the second day. You may put it into the morpheme grabber with using some of those words from the word bank to write and to read on the third day. So there's lots of ways that you could build this into your lesson plan, and there are some examples here. And so here we can see some more advanced types of lessons. And I believe, the morpheme cards. So each morpheme comes with a morpheme card, which again has the image, has the sentence, the spelling, we've got the meaning, and then we've got opportunities for the students to talk to a partner about using these particular words. And that's for every single lesson. All right, so it's a very simple layout of a lesson. It is not scripted. It does require you to, I think, go in and kind of go, okay, how do I want to incorporate this? Which I think is great. It gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom, but the support of what you need is there. Again, here's one of those cards you can see. They're very colorful. They're done on, nice cardstock so that they're going to be a little more durable. Here are some additional components. We've got some sentence frames here again. So I would totally encourage you to go and take a look at this sample. And if it is something that you are considering adding, whether it be as a resource for intervention because you've got some kids that could benefit from this, or if it's something you want to advocate for Tier 1 to drop into that instruction, that is fine as well. There are also some assessments that are involved in the first level or with kinder. The assessments are completely oral. It gets into some writing, and those are available also. These are optional. They are things that you could use if you wanted to kind of know where those kids are, or if you wanted to see as a mastery check if they actually were able to incorporate those particular morphemes into their lexicon. Okay, so final thoughts. I like the simplicity of this lesson. I was looking at IMSE also has a morphology curriculum, and I love IMSE as well. It had a number of different books. I haven't dug into that one, so I don't have something, but I do like the simplicity. We've got one book for the teacher. We've got the cards that we can put in our pocket charts or we can give to our students. We are creating their own consumable morpheme grabbers, and you can call them whatever you want, but something that the students can write in and then can have as a resource. So that means that we don't have to continuously invest in a number of reproducible consumable books. Those are things that get a little bit expensive. So I think it's actually a very valuable resource to have. I believe the cost is $130, which is one-time purchase that can be used over the years. And you could actually have that down into your tier 1 as well. So I'm most excited to see when students in tier 1 and in intervention are going through morphology instruction and building and broadening their vocabularies, how impactful that will be on their comprehension, because it is the neglected side of that simple view of reading or of the reading rope that really needs to have a little bit of attention after all of these years. So I hope that you'll take a peek at it. Let me know what you think. Again, like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget, get on my email list. You can join us for Q&A sessions or check out my course if you're looking for some support to strengthen your MTSS Tier 2 and Tier 3 reading intervention. That is available. And that's it for now. So thank you for what you do. Bye for now.